everybody. Welcome to the Ballet Rising videocast. Today I'm really excited to be speaking with somebody who I've been following for quite some time and finally had the privilege of meeting not too long ago. He was a very successful dancer, having danced many major roles around the world for many years. He then became artistic director of two world-renowned ballet companies, the English National Ballet in London and the Royal New Zealand Ballet in Wellington, New Zealand. Currently, he's a performance coach, helping ambitious professionals find clarity and meaning in what they're doing, helping people find what it is they're really after and helping them really achieve their goals. He's an incredibly wonderful person. He's incredibly intelligent, he has a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge, and I just really enjoy talking to him a lot. And I think you'll enjoy it a lot too. So let's welcome Matz Skoog. Okay, here we are with Matz. Welcome, man. Good to see you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, I thought it'd be great to have a conversation with you. You've got a lot of experience. You've been in the ballet world for a long time. You've been all around the world, literally. And so I think it would just be a great idea to have you on and talk to you and just get some of your ideas and your thoughts on what's happening in the ballet world right now. So let's just start from the beginning. Just tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into ballet and just a little bit a background on yourself.
Sure, of course. Yeah, well, I'm Swedish. That's where I come from. And I got into ballet because I come from a theater family. My mum was a dancer, my dad was a jazz musician and also an artist. And I started dancing a long time ago, in actual fact, 1965. So it's coming up to, I think, 55 years or something like that.
Okay.
So it's a long time ago. So when I started my first ballet classes with the Royal Swedish Ballet School in Stockholm, I was in full-time training, by the way, from age 8 when I started. And at the time, of course, the Royal Swedish Ballet School was a very old-fashioned type school, the kind of school that doesn't exist anymore, where you trained alongside the ballet company and you were in performances from the beginning and all that. So it was a fantastic way of growing up within the opera house in Stockholm.
I can imagine.
Actually rubbing shoulders with the company and being in operas, in ballets from the very, very beginning.
Great.
So I always felt that was a privileged way of coming into the world of ballet. I mean, I've never known anything else, really.
Wow, that's exciting.
So my training, as I said, just to briefly say, I trained at the Royal Swedish Ballet School for 10 years, but also a little bit in Russia, in the former Soviet Union in the 1970s, when it was still the bad old days when it was the Soviet Union still. So
how did that happen? I read a little bit in your bio that you had been studying in Russia. How did that come about? What was that experience like?
Well, the experience was, well, of course, when I was a young man, Russian ballet was what we all aspired to. That was, at the time, the pinnacle of skill and all of this. In fact, I got there with the help of my parents, who organized a sort of scholarship situation for me. So it wasn't an official kind of exchange thing. I'm not quite sure how they managed to wangle it. And I was there for a few months. And maybe, I suppose the greatest part of that experience was simply the experience of being there. It wasn't so much the training, to be honest with you, although the training was fabulous at the Vaganova School and then at the Kirov Theatre. Of course, it was great. Yeah. But it was more the experience of living in the Soviet Union in the 1970s under those conditions and being at the Kirov Theatre,
Yeah, I can't imagine. I went to St. Petersburg. Well, I've been to St. Petersburg twice, but yeah, my first time there, I first thing I did, I was like, okay, where's the Vaganova School? It's a temple for us ballet dancers. It's like the temple of the gods. It's just such an amazing facility and place. So many people have come from there.
Well, it certainly didn't look like a temple when I was there. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And what was it like to be in the Soviet Union at the time? Was it, I don't know, what was the feeling?
Well, it was, as I said, the bad old days, the good bad old days in the Brezhnev era. So it was interesting, and all of those sort of stories we've heard about the Soviet Union. I suppose some of that was true, and some of it wasn't. I came away with very mixed impressions of the society. Some of the things that I expected to be terrible were not so terrible, and some of the things that I expected to be good were not so good at all. So, if coming from a privileged middle-class background in Sweden to being a ballet student in the Soviet Union, yes, it was an experience, and a good one, in a good way. I mean, it was a character building, I would like to think.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories and things like that, but yeah, I always dreamt of studying in Russia. I had a lot of Russian teachers. I went to a Russian ballet school, but in Washington, D.C., and they tried to really recreate the Vaganova school. And to a certain degree, I think they were somewhat successful, but it's never the same being in Washington, D.C. versus Russia, especially, so the Soviet Russia.
One little story to tell you about my experience of dancing at the Kirov, and I never performed there, by the way, I only trained at the Kirov, was at the time, every year, the soloist boys of the Kirov company would give a commemorative ballet class for Pushkin, the great ballet teacher Pushkin. He was the teacher of Nureyev and Vasiliev and, Baryshnikov. And every year they would give a commemorative class, and I was invited to partake in that class. I was actually a member for that moment, a member of the company, which was a great honor to me.
Wow.
So they would give the class in front of an invited audience and so on. So that was great. It was great.
Oh, nice. That must have been an amazing experience. And so you went back to Sweden, you studied, and then you had a pretty phenomenal career as a professional dancer as well. How did that come about, and where did you go?
Well, yes. So I graduated from the Royal Swedish Ballet School and went into the company. In fact, I was an apprentice with the company since I was 16 years old. So the transition from being at the school and into the company just sort of happened. I hardly noticed it. The only difference was that one day they started to pay me money for being there. I think that was the only difference, really. And that was nice, by the way, when they started paying me for it. So I entered the company. I was with the Royal Swedish Ballet until I was 22. So by then I'd been at the Opera House for 14 years already.
Wow.
So that's when I left Sweden and I went to join Festival Ballet here in the UK, where I still live today, on the suggestion of Anton Dolin, who kind of invited me to come and audition for the company. And I went over to London with the expectation of possibly stay for a year or maybe 2 years, and then I'll probably go back to Stockholm. And now, 40 years later, I'm still here.
Oh, you like the UK, huh?
Well, it became, time went on and the career went on, and it was successful, and I moved on to other places. So I danced for a couple of years with Festival Ballet, and then I went over to Holland and I worked with Netherlands Dance Theatre for a season.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then that was in 1982-83. I was there for a year. I then returned to the UK to join Festival Ballet again, which then became English National Ballet. And that's really where I had most of my dancing career. But I've also danced with other companies as a guest and so on, and danced a little bit with the Rambert Dance Company here in the UK towards the end of my dancing career. So I kind of veered over from the classical ballet towards the contemporary as I matured, I would like to think.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did the same. After a while, I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do fifth position anymore. I'd rather do something a little bit more freestyle.
Well, one of the choreographers that I worked with extensively here in the UK was Christopher Bruce, whom I first worked with, in fact, when I was with Netherlands Dance Theatre. And Christopher, I've been in many of his pieces, and that was a particularly rewarding and gratifying experience working with him as an artist.
Oh, wow. I can imagine. And who was directing NDT when you were here in the Netherlands?
That was Killian, when Killian was very much in charge and very much the top of his sort of creative powers. I mean, he's still on top of his creative powers, but he does different things today.
Yeah. Gosh, that guy. Yeah, he's one of the few great choreographers. I never did any of his pieces. I was going through this list of all the great choreographers in history, and I think Killian is the only one I've never done any of his ballets, which is kind of a shame. But I mean, he's an absolute legend.
But throughout history, there are a handful of people, I suppose, that truly transform their art form at some point. And Killian was certainly one of the people who transformed dance. And since his time, of course, there's been many other people sort of following in a similar tradition, but he was the first to do what he did.
Yeah, and so many great choreographers now really came up under Killian. So many of them, I can't even name all of them right now, but I mean, there's a lot of big choreographers out there who really took their inspiration and studied under Killian. He was just sort of, it's that sort of school of Killian, I think.
And he was he still is a generous man also. So he shared his knowledge, his vision. And I think that's one of the things that has made him such a great person in the world of dance.
Yeah. I always hear amazing things about Killian and Forsyth. You know, they just say that Bill Forsyth and Killian, just working with them is just such an amazing experience. You know, you feel that they're so passionate about what they're doing, but they don't do it in a way that's like, you know, forcing you to do it. They sort of pull this drive from within the dancer to want to do it, which is a very sort of different mentality than some other choreographers. Yeah, that's great. And then, so after you finished dancing, where did you go and what happened from there?
So I finished dancing. I was in my mid to late 30s when I hung up my pointe shoes. It wasn't my pointe shoes, but you know, figuratively speaking. And then because I always had a vision of wanting to go on in the profession in different directions, and I started teaching and so on. And I still teach today. I love teaching ballet class, but I aspired to become an artistic director because I felt that, having worked under many different directors, some good ones, some not so good ones, I felt there's something more to be done in that field. And I had the great fortune and privilege to be appointed artistic director of two ballet companies, first the Royal New Zealand Ballet and then later on English National Ballet. So those were great experiences of where I had some success and some failure as well, as you do when you're in a leadership position. But so that took me in a new direction because it brought me into management and leadership and so on, which was, I suppose, also the beginning of what I'm doing today. Because today I continue to work in the dance world, both as a teacher and a consultant and advisor and so on. But I also work as a coach, as a personal development coach, because after my experience of being an artistic leader, I wanted to get into leadership development and help another generation of young artists take on the next generation to take on that mantle of leadership. And having got into those positions myself without training, without preparation, and knew how difficult that was, I wanted to find a way of how I can facilitate for other artists to elevate themselves. So that's when I started to study coaching, which is now 7 years ago. So today I work both as a professional development coach with all sorts of professionals, by the way, not just dance professional, but I do obviously a lot of dancers that come to me. But I work across the board with different types of professionals from all walks of life for professional and personal development.
I think that's something that I think that the dance world is really lacking. You know, we all have this experience. You know, it's like me, for example. I had a great career, danced as a guest artist with both English National Ballet and Royal New Zealand Ballet, by the way. Two great companies, loved it. But yeah, you know, I had a great career as a dancer, and so I understand dancing. But understanding the technique of dancing is one thing, but understanding how to pull something out of someone, you know, pull the drive from them in a productive way, and understanding how to really lead from the front is a whole nother thing that I think a lot of companies and schools sometimes really lack. There's like a, do this tendu because I say so, but there isn't this sort of, okay, how do I get that person to want to do that tendu better so that they're doing it for themselves rather than just because I'm telling them to.
Yeah.
So I think it's what you're doing is incredibly important, and I hope that the community in the future can really take that and absorb it a lot more. And so tell me a little bit about, because we've talked a little bit about this in the past, and I think it's really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about your methodology that you use.
Well, I mean, I use coaching, which is basically in its purest form, it's non-directive. You don't direct the person, you facilitate their development, you encourage them to find their own particular answers and so on. However, having been in the dance world for as many years as I have, if I'm working with a young dancer in this capacity, I kind of know what the problems they might be encountering. So I will probably take on more of a mentorship role in that situation. Whilst if I would be working as a coach with someone from an entirely different type of profession, I would probably take on a much more a non-directive coaching approach. But the thing with what I think is worth mentioning, with you touched on about dancers, young dancers today, I think there is some fine dance schools out and about in the world that train the dancers beautifully, and they come out knowing everything about dancing and can do fantastic pirouettes and jump and spin and all sorts of things, but they don't know how to manage their careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have no preparation in, especially today. I think when a dancer's careers tends to be shorter today, I think, than they were 20, 30 years ago, when it was possible. When I was a young man, it was possible to have a 25-year career as a professional dancer, especially if you were a male, of course. Today, it's much more difficult. Careers are shorter, things change, competition is tougher. So I think young dance professionals today need to be equipped with certain nous, a little bit of an entrepreneurial kind of approach, perhaps. They need to be smart, they need to be resilient, they need to be motivated, much more so than was the case if you go back in time a little bit. So I think it's tougher today to be a professional dancer than it used to be. So therefore, I think it's important to prepare young dancers for the challenges, the life challenges that comes with the profession, not just being good dancers, but what are the challenges?
Yeah. I had a conversation with Paul Sequist not too long ago about that same subject. We were talking about me and my career, and as a young dancer, I came out of school, perfect tendus, great pirouette jumps, all that stuff, but an absolute, mess up in here as far as how to take care of myself, how to approach a career in a professional way, how to really manage yourself as a professional and things like that. And yeah, we were saying that is really lacking. It's like, and it's extremely important. I always compare it. I got into ABT at the age of 18, and I got into ABT at the same time as Marcelo Gomez. And we were both big, tall guys, good, nice feet, jumps, everything, pretty similar dancers, but Marcelo had an understanding of what he wanted. And he had an understanding of the discipline that it takes to get from here to here. There was there was a sense of patience. He didn't want to just run and do a principal role immediately. I'm sure he wanted to, but he knew he had to go through steps, and so he had it all planned out. I, on the other hand, just was a disaster up here and didn't look at things down the road a little bit further. I thought, oh, nothing's happening. Okay, screw it. I'm going to go party, an 18-year-old kid in New York City, and just went down that path of kind of going, oh, screw it, And, we're both intelligent people. We're both good dancers, but one was extremely successful and made it up to a principal dancer at ABT. And I ended up leaving that season and going to a smaller company, And I think it's extremely important that people understand this, that the dancing is one aspect of it, but managing yourself, managing your career and being intelligent that way is a whole nother ballgame. And that's why I think it's extremely important that we as a community and as a profession really understand what you're doing and the benefits of coaching people like that. So, yeah.
Well, a little bit similar with me, actually, because when I started out my career, I wasn't a mess, but I had no sense of direction, because I sort of just drifted through my schooling and my training, and very successfully. And what saved me was the fact that I was talented.
Yeah.
I became successful quite early on. And had that not been the case, I probably would not have had much of a career. I mean, it's obviously you wouldn't have had much of a career, but I didn't become successful because I was smart. I became successful because I had a natural talent. And that got me over that initial hurdle, that then eventually I woke up and said, oh, okay, I better do something about this now.
Yeah. I mean, me was just like learning the hard way a few times. I just got some real blunt, bam, basically Kevin McKenzie said, I think you should leave ABT. It was my dream company. I dreamt of it since I was a little kid. I was in the company for a year and he was like, yeah, and that was a real reality check for me. And then I had a couple others throughout my career. So I mean, I had to get smarter, but I had to learn some tough lessons, as we do sometimes. Yeah, fascinating stuff. So what do you think, what's the ballet world or the world in general, but the ballet world is just one little microcosm. What do you think what's your opinion of what's happening right now? Because we're just going through such a massive shift, it seems like. What do you think of what's happening right now? I mean, primarily due to COVID.
Because of COVID, well, obviously, I mean, first of all, so much more is happening online than what happened in the past. And whilst going back in time a little bit, we used to resist putting dance on film because we said, dance on film, it'll never work. It's two-dimensional and so on. But of course, now what we see happening right now, there's a lot of really interesting dance film out and about on YouTube and so on. And people are presenting their work imaginatively and creatively and aesthetically interesting. So I think that is, if anything positive has come out of the COVID situation, that's one thing. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily is going to take over from the live performance, because live performance is, of course, live, and nothing will ever replace that.
Yeah.
But to have had this opportunity over the past several months for some artists to develop an alternative medium for themselves to show their work has not been a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see how people are sort of adapting to the situation. And for me, more than anything, I'm just really all about, because Ballet Rising, we're working with a lot of people. It's all about people around the world who are basically very, very distant from the mainstream ballet world. And now that we're making everything digital, it's just sort of like suddenly everybody's just right in the mix of it. And so I'm fascinated to see how many new fans and new people who've never been exposed to the arts before are now suddenly there's a tidal wave of content for them to consume and take and understand, and it pulls the community together closer in a lot of ways.
And the other thing we see, I think, which I find interesting, is there's a much more crossover. This is regardless of COVID and all that, but there's much more crossover in the arts between the different performing arts forms than has been in the case in the past. And a dancer today who graduates from school today, they can't just be a ballet dancer or a contemporary dancer or a jazz dancer or whatever. They have a need to have a grasp of all of these forms of dancing, and perhaps also be able to use their voice from time to time. So, there's a much greater, the expectations on a young dancer today from professionally in their skill sets, much greater than it ever been before. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
as a ballet teacher myself, over the past several years, I've, coming from a very traditional classical ballet background, as I do, and I've got good solid training behind me, I have veered more and more over to working with contemporary dancers as a teacher, because I really enjoy that as a ballet teacher, to provide ballet class, traditional dance class, as I try to call it, rather than ballet class. Because it sits better with some people, rather than you say the B word, then they go, oh, ballet, you can't do ballet. But anyway, I have found it it's quite, as a ballet teacher, it's satisfying working with some contemporary dancers, because they engage with the dance class in a different way from some classical ballet dancers do. Where classical ballet dancers use the class much more as a utilitarian kind of vehicle for training and so on, effectively and all that. Contemporary dancers tend to engage with the process of the dance class differently, and I find that really satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Inquisitive, explorative, which is the nature of creative, of contemporary dance anyway. They explore, they engage with the process.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what we always talk about what dancers like, and as a dancer I like to do classics, but then I got older, I was like, okay, maybe I want to do a little bit more contemporary. But now I'm discovering more what teachers like, and I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, Flavio Salazar, who's a teacher at ABT, and he loves to work with kids. He loves to get in with kids and just discover what makes them tick and help them discover for themselves what they need to do. I like to work with adults. I love adult classes. I teach adult classes here in Amsterdam, and most of my students are older than I am. None of them have ever been professional dancers, but I just love the way they work and this drive and passion. And it's not for this purpose of saying, okay, someday I'm going to go on stage and become a prima ballerina. No, I mean, none of them have any desire or hope of doing that. It's just they want to come in and they want to work and they want to learn, and period. And they love it when I just throw really hard stuff at them. And so it's just it's interesting to see what people really
well, when I'm asked sometimes, what kind of teacher are you? What I like to answer is that I don't teach people how to dance. I will teach people how to be dancers. I think that's a significant difference.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I would not be particularly good at working with kids. I mean, I love kids, but I wouldn't want to be a teacher of children, because the mechanics of teaching dance, I think, it needs people of great skill to do that.
Yeah, and patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same for me. It's like I try to teach people how, I find that a lot of people are really focused very heavily on positions. Ballet is so position oriented, and what I try to do is break those positions down and teach people how to move. Follow the music, use your body, coordination, things like that. It's just a fun little way of seeing how we like to work.
Approach to each exercise, not like an exercise, but as a little mini dance.
Yeah, exactly. I try to tell people, don't think of this as a series of steps. Think of it all as one continuous steps. And you go into a plie, you press down. As soon as you get to the bottom, you start pressing right back up. As soon as you get to the top, press it back down. And you come up from the grand plie, and you immediately start into the port de bras forward, and it just sort of makes it very seamless. And then you notice people start dancing, and they're not hitting poses and worrying so much. They're just enjoying the movement of it. For me, I love to watch it, especially just people out there just having fun and going for it.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, it's so gratifying. But yeah, so anything else? Anything you'd like to say to the world? I think you've got an amazing mind. You've been around a lot. You've got a lot of experience. Anything you'd love to just say to the world right now? World of dance, or just the world of ballet. Anyone?
Well, I'm quite excited about what is happening generally with dance today. I mean, I think dance, as I said, is facing some major issues to overcome. But I'm also excited with what's happening out in the world of dance, because it's creative, it's interesting, it's new. You actually see things that are surprising. And that's, that's the key to development. And you suddenly see something, well, that's surprising. You think that I'm surprised by that. Then you've seen something which is new and different. But also, just going back to my function as a coach, I've had several conversations now with numerous dancers of their, because confidential conversations about career, about their challenges and issues and excitements and so on. And it's tremendously rewarding to be in that situation and to discover that dancers today are actually engaging more with themselves in this respect than has always sometimes been the case. So to be a coach in this environment is really quite lovely, and to be given the confidence sometimes from young dancers about what their dreams and desires are is a great place to be. And because as a director, one of the things that always gave me a kick, what made being an artistic director, what made it fun for me, was when I was able to create an opportunity for someone to forward their career and get a chance and to take a step forward. That's what gave me a kick. But of course, now I can continue doing this in my capacity as coach. And that's even better, because I don't have to worry about all the other stuff that goes with the job of being an artistic director. I can just focus on that personal career development that I can help a dancer with.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's great. And so if anybody's interested in looking for you, what's the best place to find you?
Well, I can be found via my website, which is www.matzskoog.com.
Perfect.
Simple.
Yeah. And you're also on social media. I've seen you around on LinkedIn and.
Yeah. I keep a presence going on LinkedIn and Instagram and so on, just to, so people don't forget that I exist. I think that's.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Well, cool, Mads. It was great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time, and always great to get your input on things. And yeah, I hope to have you on and talk to you a lot more in the future.
Thank you. I would love that. Thank you very much, Jason.
Yeah, perfect, man. Well, have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Ciao.